Hi.
Hi. Well, we're thrilled you're all here. I'm Patter Hellstrom. I'm an artist and a curator and have known Christine for quite some time. We often have long conversations about her work and the way her work is evolving and changing. So Christine has very generously invited me to come and chat with you all and chat with Christine and basically just do a somewhat informal walkthrough and make some of those connections. We're just going to go back and forth and hopefully it'll shed some light on the work. I asked to start with this piece. Because the question that I was thinking about is in painting the in-between spaces, it seems to be about dualities. And within this very fractured, uncertain time that we're living in, my question developed, how can glimmers be recognized in daily life and within studio practice? How do we recognize those glimmers when we are flooded with so much information and misinformation, so much every day from our phones and everywhere? How do we recognize those glimmers, and how do those fleeting moments really develop a sense of beauty, connection, safety, and remind us of our humanity? So I'm going to send it over to you to chit-chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, in case people don't know, this word glimmers is actually like a term in psychology, and it was coined by someone called Deb Dana. And it's kind of like the opposite of triggers. So we kind of know what triggers are, but glimmers are moments of joy, safety, and connection that can positively impact mental health by regulating the nervous system. And I realized, I came across this term a couple of years ago, but I realized that I've already been doing that in my practice, even before I knew the term for it. Mm-hmm. But I love having a shorthand to just talk about what I'm doing. But what I do is, it kind of started when I moved to LA, this idea of driving around and everything's stressful. And then when I arrive at a place, then I try and orient. I had a whole series called The View from the Parking Lot, which was just me finding something beautiful in the moment to calm myself down. And it's kind of expanded from there. And I actually think it's really interesting because I thought it's kind of joy and awe is sort of what I was looking for. And I do have a lot of awe in this painting. But more recently, the part of the definition that's about safety and connection has really shifted for me and come more to the fore in the last year and a half, basically since I moved to this studio. And I moved into the studio a couple weeks after the election in 2024, and then there were the fires, and then there were the ice raids, and everything else that's happening. Thinking about safety and connection. And so what I'm trying to connect to is place, kind of, and finding, and nature. So a lot of my work has a lot of sky, and that's something, even though we live in a city and I'm painting urban landscapes, I'm really drawn to the sky. And sometimes we actually get weather. And so this painting was after it had rained one time, and then the sun was kind of breaking through the clouds. And it's my interpretation of that, but I actually call this painting radiant. And the rays of light coming through is something that is, I think, clearly hopeful, but something that I saw and then I really wanted to paint.
The reason that I suggested that we begin here in thinking about the in-between and about the glimmers is that there is this sense of radiating light that's coming from this central figure that really is expansive and uplifting when you look at the piece. And if you look at the painting itself, the majority of the painting is that uplifting quality. And then it's grounded by this wonderfully detailed but nondescript section. And one of the things that I noticed is that it is grounded, because that's part of what glimmers do, is they ground us in these moments of flood with this repetitive design, which ties back into the idea of meditation or breath work or ways that we find to deal with the intensity of the times that we're living in. And I particularly, and just told Christine this, is that I love the contrast between the regular, predictable, very detailed pattern here with what feels to be a little bit more organic pattern. So it feels like the two things are connected, but not the same. And I find that as something really interesting in her work from one piece to the next, that you'll find things that are almost mirrors of each other, kind of going back to the idea of dualities that you speak about in your artist statement.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you can see that. Sometimes I do this sort of stuff a little bit intuitively, and then it's good that it's coming through. But yeah, I guess to speak of the duality, like I've always been interested in what's in between. Like I grew up moving around a lot, and I've kind of lived between cultures and languages and cities, and there's always, it's never like this or that. Like I think the in-between is really interesting, and most of what I'm painting are places that other people might just walk right past, but that's where I find that there can be quite a lot of beauty, actually, and then you can recognize it. I think I like that it's sort of, it becomes like a little universal, so like this is something that does exist, and it's near my studio, but like everybody's seen like a corrugated metal shipping container or whatever, like what it is, so you can think about where that is in your environment too. And I like that kind of, it becomes like more of a universal language too, even though the work is very LA specific in some ways, but people from other cities are also connecting to it. And I think that goes back to the connection. That's where I feel like, oh, like I'm finding things that bring me joy, and then by painting them, it's somehow connecting to other people and giving them that space to maybe feel more spacious or look at their environments differently too, which is always a good byproduct of the painting.
Exactly. And as that spaciousness, I feel like, especially in this show, the tight palette reduces the noise.
Oh, cool.
And increases the sense of spaciousness and kind of a moment of breath from the world that we're in. Because so much of the world we're in is very, very loud, with all this competing information. But as you come to this piece, the color is softer, and it gives us a chance to breathe in a different way.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about stillness and quiet, and because I feel like we're in this incessant overstimulation, right? The culture we live in, the city we live in, being on our phones, it just feels constant. So I've been trying to find quiet. And also, like all the paintings are really layered, so the longer you look at them, the more you get out of them, is kind of what I think. So I think it gives you the opportunity to also, like, I'm quiet as I make them, but also the viewer can kind of experience that too, I think. Yeah,
and I think that, and I think this is a good lead into where we want to lead you next, because we're going to ask you to move just a smidge. I feel like the proportions in your work have a strong role to play in that quiet and in that spaciousness. And we're going to take a peek at proportion as we turn our eyes in this direction. One of the things that's so exciting to me about this show is that this piece acts a little bit like a key to understand the works on this side, and then also to understand the meditative pieces on this side. So the thing that is so fun to notice is that the actual proportion of these is the same proportion as, and very intentionally, these were custom, Christina, these custom made to match this proportion. So you're really looking through these as a pane of glass, as a looking out into the world. So there's that connection with the proportion. But then when you flip, and these are looking out to see this, the changing light in that, again, that meditative way. Whereas you look on this side, and these pieces are replicated within the key. This one is here, and this one is here. And I'd love for you to distinguish the looking out and then the looking at the reflections and how that works in meditative paintings and the series right next to you.
Yeah, okay. So so the studio that I moved to is on the 3rd floor of a building that's like on the edge of the fashion district in downtown. And I have windows on 2 sides. So out of one set of windows, I'm actually seeing that building. That's the edge of the building I'm looking at across the way from me. And that's what I see sort of directly, but I can also peek out of my window at an angle and look farther down. And then it starts to reflect the sunset over here. So that's kind of, you know, middle of the day, blue sky. But as the light changes, that building's west facing. So it picks up all the sunset colors, and those reflect into this window. This one I abstracted a little bit, where this piece is the inside of my window. It's like one of those old fashioned that you have to like open it. I can only do sign language because I don't know what this thing is called. And what's reflected in the glass here are things that I actually can't see. So I can't see those like power lines and stuff from the angle that I'm at. And if I went out of the building to find them, I wouldn't find them because it would be a different angle. So I thought that was sort of interesting to play with. And I kind of made this painting and these paintings sort of at the same time, pulling out some of the, I liked the idea of like, this is zoomed in and then I zoomed in more to really just like concentrate on one thing at a time. I think that's what's going on with that. And so then on the other side of my studio, the windows are all frosted glass, except for there's like 2 panes that are clear. And one of them, this is the view that I see out of those panes. And my desk is kind of set up there, so I'm often kind of sitting and daydreaming looking out that side. And I started to just really, there are more buildings. There's a bunch of buildings I could look at, but this building's a little bit taller than the others, and it's white. And it's also west facing. So as the sun sets, it starts to change colors. That's how you get the golden hour, and then it starts to go pink. And then as the sky gets more colorful behind it, the building starts to go more gray again. So I wanted to capture that. I mean, it's very much in the, you know, the Impressionists would do this kind of watching something over the course of the day. And I said it to myself as an exercise because I don't typically repaint the same building. Like that became like a meditative thing where it's like the same image and all I'm changing is the color, like the light. So to me, it was both an exercise and like a meditation practice. And I do these are called meditations 1 through 5. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, kind of inside reflection and outside.
Oh yes, right. So I'm looking out towards those. Yes.
And I love that even in these contemporary times, you're looking back at the lineage in our history to see the role that light has played. I recently had a chance to see Monet's Haystacks, obviously an organic example, but just to see that there is that connection point with how light has been represented. And even when you think about the Impressionists, that was not a completely rosy time it was, again, a time, I think, where glimmers and light and kind of finding your way was necessary. It was not, I don't know if we've ever lived in times that have been easy times, but clearly I can see a link between where we are now with the chaotic world and how that would fall into looking back at how light has played a strong role throughout art history.
Yeah, that is interesting. So I got to see, I think 4 or 5 of Monet's Rouen Cathedral paintings when I went to Paris in 2022. And that was really incredible. They're quite large, actually, and quite dark. There isn't, I mean, they are at different times of day, but my light is very different here. You know, I've known about those. Like, I've never like felt the need to do that. And that experience didn't spark this directly. Mm-hmm. Now we are here in 2026. And I was like, oh, this is the time. And I think maybe that's interesting too, that like sometimes we just need a thing or we grow into it. I don't know. In a sense, like I could see it setting myself an assignment like this as being a little bit like something you might do in school. And yet I didn't feel like I was in school. I felt like I just need to do this. And even if people don't understand what I'm doing or think it's cheesy or whatever, I just need to do it. So I did.
Well, and it's such
and it was helpful.
It's such a perfect foil for what we saw in the first piece we looked at with the very regular meditative patterning on the left side. Now we're seeing it, you know, in full bloom. And it almost feels like the time of day has been condensed. So I almost get the sense that I'm looking at maybe 30 minutes of how the light is changing. And it's fascinating.
Actually, I did have a friend text me who came to see the show when I wasn't here, and he said that the time is disorienting, but in a good way. And I'll take it.
Exactly. So good.
I like it.
Yeah, and it's just, I just love seeing them together. But the part that just slays me is the relationship between the proportion. Now I'm going to ask a question that is very much of 2026, and that is, we're talking about proportions, and you and I've had a lot of conversations about phones and how we use our phones. They're ubiquitous in our lives. You know, I wonder. Do these have any connection, or because I'm even looking at the proportion of these to phone screens? And when we think about what a phone does, the phone it may be compressed images and be more inward facing space, really shaped by digital kind of immersion, while the window panes feel so much more expansive in their orientation. Can you just touch on how technology might tie in with the space in between and the glimmers that we are looking for? We're all looking for the glimmers. Yes. We have enough of the triggers. We're looking for the glimmers. And also at that same time, as we're looking for those glimmers, we're looking for, you know, this sense of peace. So it seems like we've got another duality, and I'm going back to your artist statement where we're thinking about dualities. So maybe a little convo about how the screen plays a role.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, I mentioned earlier, like just overstimulation, and it's really changing our brains, right? And I think about language, like language is changing really fast now. Yeah, so I've been thinking about like, we're always on our phones, right? And I really, in the pandemic is when I started digital boundaries. And I mean, the phones are a tool and I love it. I love having aspects of it, but the doom scroll, especially, you know, in the last, whatever, several years has just gotten too much. I feel like this like sponge where I'm just like soaking it all in, and then I wasn't doing well mental health wise, and so I was like, okay, I need to change something. Yeah, so I think like getting out of that doom scroll, so a little bit goes back to your thing about the quiet, getting to quiet and stillness. I love this TED talk from Pico Iyer, who did it in 2014. It's called The Art of Stillness. And he's talking about like in this age of constant motion, it's a luxury to get to pay attention. And that was in 2014. So now I think that I would change the word luxury to, I almost think of like paramount that we pay attention. And I've really been thinking about attention and focus, and I can't do it. Like, and we know, like, that, you know, if the phone's always pinging you, it disrupts your train of thought, which isn't good for artists, but it's not really good for anyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been kind of, I don't know, I was starting, this might seem a little big of a statement, but I do think like this age of distraction is kind of like our opiate of the masses. I feel like my role is, as I'm trying to break out of that and find more spaciousness, is to like offer that to other people and offer like, let's go back to the basics. Like humans have always been creative. We didn't need technology to create. We did use some tools, but we used them insofar as we could express ourselves. So let's go back to that. And I was thinking about this idea of me sitting still and just watching something slowly unfold. And I like, that's given me a lot of spaciousness. And then it's turned out painting them has given me a lot of clarity. So even though I sort of had the idea, it's only after I've made the body of work that I realized, like, oh, that's what I was doing, or that's how it feels. Like I can feel different. The conversations I've had about the work since been in the show, other people are feeling it too, and that feels, that's, I'm like, okay, that, I don't know, it's another thing of connection.
And it's connecting with that human experience of looking. I mean, we live in California, and golden hour here is spectacular. The color, the light, the quiet, it's just so beautiful.
Right, and now I have a front row seat because of my studio windows. I can sit there and just watch it happen. There was a teenager, and then he asked me like how long I look at the sky, or how much time I spend looking at the sky, and I was like, a lot. Because you could take a picture of it, but it doesn't look the same. So even though I do have photo references, I'm mostly doing the skies out of memory and like watching the sky. So if I'm trying to figure out like when does it change from pink and then it moves up to purple, I have to watch the sky over sunset and be like, okay, at this time of day it starts to go purple at the bottom, and then the blue will come after that. So I've sort of tracked that kind of stuff. And that kind of goes back to how the phone is a tool, but it doesn't do the same. Like it flattens everything. All the images we're seeing on the scroll are flattened, and they're one-dimensional. And my paintings are layered, and there's something behind them. So even in these, they're reflecting a view, but there's a window that's seen. There is something behind that window. I don't know what's there, but I love that it opens up a possibility. Oh, there's something underneath. And that's another kind of in between, right?
But you know, the other thing that I'm noticing just now as we're talking is especially this connection right here. So the in-between is the connection point of these two paintings, because this line is implied between the two.
Yes.
So it's very exciting to see what is not painted, is that space in between these two that make that very tight connection. Yeah, just so fun. The way that both of these series tie into the viewpoint. Yeah, or the key.
Yes, and then it's, I should have named it the key. It's called through lines, which also makes sense too. Like you have kind of a through line. There's through lines within it, and there's through lines to the other work.
Yeah. Now, one thing that you have been talking about a little bit is the overwhelm, the kind of stepping back, and there are two relatively new books that are very seriously looking at the power of art to improve health and well-being. And I'm just going to read you a little quote. Art can reduce stress, inflammation, improve heart health, lifts moods, slow cognitive decline, according to Daisy Fancourt's new book, The Art Cure, The Science of How Art Saves Lives. And that was recently, an article was in the LA Times by Keith Wagstaff. Also, Your Brain on Art is a New York Times bestseller, and the co-author and brain researcher, Susan Magnuson, argues that engaging with art, making it, viewing it, or just being around it, actively shapes your brain in ways that improve mental, emotional, and even physical health. And I think this is new science that we're all can be really happy that we're here today. And that it's wired to the response of the art as it activates different systems at once: sensory, emotional, cognitive, motor. Because of that, it can regulate stress, boost mood, sharpen thinking, strengthen social connection, which is something you've been speaking a lot about in your work. She leans heavily into neuroscience and neuroplasticity. Basically, your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on what you do. And art is one of the most powerful ways to shape that wiring.
Yeah, that's just incredible. It turns out all we need to do is make some art.
Or look at art, or be in community with art.
Yeah, no, that was really powerful. And also in that, one of the articles you sent me, someone was talking about how one suggestion she had was to listen to the live recording of a concert and just do that, like just do one thing. That's an interesting thing too, because we live in this culture of like multitasking, right? And which is partly why we're constantly on our devices, because we're trying to do 5 things at once. And I thought about that because I don't typically do one thing at a time. I think that's for me is like doing 2 things, like something with my hands and listening to something. And so even when I'm painting, there are parts of my painting where I'm listening to an audiobook or music. And for me, like music is something that really helps shift my mood. And so I think about like the art that's been made in other forms and how that's helped me. And it's taken me a while to figure out like I thought I was just making art for myself, right? But now it's like I'm like, oh, visual art also has a place too, and that's exciting to feel that.
So this show very well may be a bit of an antidote for the moment that we are in right now, which is, I would say, flooded and hard to navigate. I just keep looking at this series and having this incredible sense of peace to just watch the light simply change across the surface. Let's have some questions. I think that'd be a great idea.
Oh, thank you. Sure. I'm glad you brought that up. That is actually, so during the pandemic, I made up my own mantra, which is when life hits you down, look up. Sit in my backyard and watch the sky, and that was really, really helpful. And I thought about how everyone could do that around the world. It felt like, oh, everyone has access to that. Yes, so the question is, do I have anxiety? Well, yes. So the question is like, if being in quiet makes it naturally. Yeah, I think it used to come naturally because I did grow up in a place like I growing up, it was just different. And then because I've now have more access to technology and stuff, it did take me a while to turn it off again. And that was the first step for me really was starting these digital boundaries. I've always found painting meditative, and I can really get into a flow state when I'm doing something with my hands. That really helps. Just sitting, like I can't just sit and meditate, or I didn't think I could for years. That makes me anxious. So I was like, okay, painting is my meditation, or walking is my meditation. Also moving. And then after fires happened, I started meditating. Actually, I like downloaded a meditation app, and so what I would do is get to the studio and do like a 10-minute meditation. And I've been able to do it. I mean, they're guided meditation. But yeah, I've been able to do it. It's kind of shifted, and I think it makes me anxious to track things. So I'm trying not to be perfect. I'm just like, oh, it's like a practice. And some days I do it, and some days I don't. Sometimes it's easy, and some days it's not. But I'm like, that's painting is like that, and life is like that. So it's really like opened me up to. I think actually what I'm doing is I'm getting a little more comfortable with being uncomfortable, and then it's getting easier. Like yes. So the question is because I paint a lot of freeways, if I'm seeing them while I'm driving or when I'm a passenger. Both, but I would say majority are when I'm driving actually. And I do take photos, but it's when I'm stopped in traffic. It's like really, really slow traffic. So yes, not safe for kids, not recommending, but full disclosure.
And one thing that I think is really interesting as you look at this work and at the proportions in the new studio is when you look at that set of 4 square paintings feels very different. It has more of an element of like little snippets of architectural elements or something that you saw over, a freeway overpass. They just have a very different quality, I think, than this work. Is there a time difference between them?
Yeah, I think the stuff on those 2 walls are slightly older, and then the stuff on these 2 walls is the newest.
Okay.
But they've all been made in about the last year and a half.
Interesting.
So I do have a photo just to get the details, but I'm not, like I don't look at it and paint exactly. I kind of just got the basic shapes of the building. I'm using the photo very minimally. The photo's not a good reference for sky. I paint with my back to this window because the light is better that way, so then I have to turn around and look, if that makes sense.